And welcome back to the Financially Simple Experience. Let's wrap it up. Let's wrap up our assessment as it relates to increasing the value of our companies. Now, for some time, we've been looking at a series of questions. We've dealt with our business attractiveness, and we've looked at our business from a standpoint of, is it ready to sell? Is it ready to transition? Is it ready for us to take another step? We've also looked at the exit readiness of the company. Can the company operate without you, the founder, without you, the business owner, without you, the key executive in the company? Can it operate? That's the business assessment. And then we've been looking at the personal assessment. And last episode, we dealt a lot with the emotions. We dealt with personal thinking after the fact. We dealt with time commitments that we may be challenged with. Today, we want to dive into the financial readiness. The financial readiness, that's money, our business owner money, not the money in the business, but money outside the business. So we want to dive into this area today. Whenever we look at exit, we have to remember that exit planning is good business planning. Let me say that again. Exit planning is good business planning. Now, that's not my phrase. I heard that phrase for the first time by my friend and colleague in the exit planning community, Chris Snyder, who is currently the, president of the Exit Planning Institute. When I first heard him say that statement about 6 years ago, I kind of did one of those double takes. Like, what did he just say? It was one of those that just paused me. And what I've learned is that there will be a point in our lives whenever opportunity and timing collide. When opportunity and timing collide. And what we want is our businesses to be fully prepared and our personal lives to be fully prepared. So when the opportunity arises at peak value, that we can capitalize on that for the benefit of our family, our employees, our vendors, our legacies, our heritage, and a litany of other things that we could fill in there. So today we want to dive into financial readiness. This is the last of the 4 assessments that we have to examine to determine where are we going to pour our efforts into. Now, in our organization, we begin every business owner out with a comprehensive financial plan, which incorporates law and tax. We bring in lawyers and tax professionals to help us build a tax-sensitive, legal financial plan. That's unique. Many, as we talked about not too long ago in an episode, we talked about what is the role of a financial planner. And I said they've got to be a fiduciary. They've got to be comprehensive in nature. Today, this brings it almost back to that beginning point, that 360 point, where here we are at personal finances. We spent some time talking about, is the business ready? We've graded ourselves. We talked about the exit of the business, and we talked about our emotions. But today, let's deal with personal finance, our personal side. So as always, we're going to grade ourselves from a scale of 1 to 6. 1 means pretty much non-existence. 6, you're more than likely never going to achieve that. That is best in class. In other words, you can go to a trade show and talk about this and teach others how they can become the best of the best. That is the scaling point. So there is no average. If you think about it, 1, 2, and 3 is below average. 4, 5, and 6 is above average. Now, I've been doing this a long time. I've been talking with business owners. And you know what's amazing? Is all of us are always above average. We're always above average. I read a study about drivers who thought that their driving ability was above average. And in fact, almost 80% of drivers think their driving ability is above average. Friends, that's statistically improbable. We can't do that. So when we think about these questions today, I want you to think about, would you consider yourself below average or above average? And if you're above average, are you best in class? So let's think about this. From a wealth and financial management standpoint, we've already talked about that the age in which you exit is going to determine a lot of things. If you exit the business and hope to retire or hope to start another job, you may end up needing more capital to sustain you during that time period than someone who is, let's say, dealing with Social Security income. So someone like my mother's age who's, mid-60s, her life expectancy theoretically and statistically is not as long as mine. She's my mother. She was mid-20s whenever I was born. So theoretically, I should at least have some 20 years of life, hopefully, longer than hers would. Now, that's all statistic. Who knows what the future holds other than a good God. but that's the statistics. So if we retire at a young age, then we have to realize that age is a factor. So think about it. How old will you be when you make your transition? I have clients that say, Justin, I want to hit 50 years old and I want to be done. They're physically laborious jobs they have, and they want to take a transition and do something where they use their mind. I have other clients who use their mind. They say, I want to change and do something I use my hands with. I've seen it all, friends. In order to understand our wealth gap, we have to know our starting point on our age and our ending point on our age, but we also have to know what expenses we're going to have in retirement or after transition. Have you considered, as we spoke about last episode, the amount of money that you're going to need for or after this transition? And that single point, friends, is the most misunderstood point in all of the planning world that I deal with. And that's because business owners truly don't know how much money we spend. Unless you have normalized your income on a day-by-day basis, chances are you're spending considerably more than what you're anticipating you're spending. And in fact, if we look at what we're spending through the business and now we transition away from the company, and perhaps we're in our mid-60s and now we're thinking about, oh my goodness, what about healthcare costs as our bodies age? What about additional financial costs for medical expenses, nursing home, home care? I have several clients who've retired in their 40s. What about the wedding cost for your kids? What about education cost? College. I laugh about the fact that I'm going to have 12 years consecutive of college tuition to pay. 12 years in a row. It's like, yeah, it's great. I get to support somebody's habit out there. Yeah, I've got 12 years I have to plan for. If I were to sell today, I'd have to consider that. So when we look at our lifestyle after exit, what is it? Have you determined what your idealistic lifestyle will be? I've often considered this. I've considered, man, wouldn't it be nice to travel from Canada down to Texas and hunt deer and duck and birds and you name it, just following the rut for deer? Wouldn't that be fun? I think that'd be fun. Wouldn't it be fun to spend time fishing nonstop, fishing offshore, fishing inshore, maybe doing an Alaska salmon fishing trip or a halibut fishing trip in Alaska? Man, that'd be fun. Those are some post-exit lifestyles. As we consider our lifestyles, we have to think about the gap. The gap. We spent a whole episode dealing with the wealth gap, but how much money will you need to sustain this idealistic lifestyle aside from the business? And then that determines if the business is prepared to help you meet the needs. So we have to look at our thinking around wealth management, around personal finances. But then we have to deal with business value. So we know our personal financial desires, but what is the business worth today? And if you understand what the business is worth today, does it align with your wealth management post-sale strategy? So here's a crazy mathematical equation. I was talking with a client who's pulling in about $800,000 out of their business, $800,000 a year. And I told this individual, I said, in order for you to match that income after you sell your business, you're going to need roughly $20 million in assets or income-producing assets, which help us to sustain your level of lifestyle. And this individual kind of chuckled and they said, Justin, there's no way. There's no way we can do that. I said, well, let's look at the math. For every $1 million, we can safely assume that it would provide us 4% or $40,000 a year in income. 4%, $40,000. So for $10 million, it'd roughly provide us $400,000 a year in income. It's called the 4% rule. It's a rule that we use just back of the napkin. Now, obviously, I can argue for and against this rule, but it's a good, dirty math rule that most of us business owners just want to be able to put something in our head. Now, obviously, we can have rental properties or business interest or things that yield us greater than 4% return. But 4% is the number that through hell or high water, through good markets and bad markets, we should be able to maintain the lifestyle that we're used to. So if they need $800,000, that's roughly $20 million at 4%. So do you know how much your business is worth? And are you satisfied with what it's currently valued? If you know what it's worth and you're satisfied with what is currently valued, then perhaps, just perhaps, your personal finances are prepared for your exit. Then let's take another step further. If you know what it's valued and you know what it's worth and you're satisfied with the valuation, have you calculated the net proceeds after consultants and taxes and business brokers and all these other different costs involved? Because that could generate 10, 20% of the total sales price. The exit strategy for other shareholders. I often make the assumption I'm talking to a solopreneur, somebody who owns their business 100%, but I'm reminded that so many of our listeners may have colleagues or partners involved. Have you spoken with the shareholders? Maybe do they want to exit at the same time you do? Does the current managing document, the operating agreement, the buy-sell agreement, does it govern what the value should be? Will you have conflict over the fair market value and with what the value in the document is appraised at? You see, friends, all of this comes together. If we look at a buyer's position, is the buyer having to make decisions about key members? Maybe there's a family member. So oftentimes I'll see business owners who husband and wife work in the business and they want to retire. Well, now we've got to replace two different, more than likely, key positions in the business. Have you considered that? Are you going to offer bonuses to your family or to the team who stays? See, whenever you go into family business, oftentimes we have to incentivize or help capitalize the second generation. And so are you going to offer bonuses in order for them to stay? There's lots of things to consider when it comes to personal finances. Let's dive even deeper. Do you know how much money you make? If I ask that question to business owners, if I were to ask it to 10 business owners, very few of them could answer the question. Candidly, do you know how much money you make? Do you know how much money you spend? Ooh, that's a tough one. How much money do you spend? We're not talking about just at the home front. We're talking about home and the business side of things. Do you know how much money you spend? Do you know where you spend your money? On a scale of 1 to 6, how in control are you of your cash flow? I love Dave Ramsey's statement to make you knowing where every soldier goes. He identifies a dollar as a soldier. Do you know where every dollar goes? Can you identify it? Candidly, many business owners can't because we're so busy keeping the plates in the air spinning that we often forsake or don't identify them. Let me ask you a very simple question. Do you believe that you could benefit more? Do you believe that you could benefit from more control of your personal budget? Maybe perhaps you could save some tax dollars. Maybe, just maybe, you could save more outside of the business. Maybe you could redeploy the wasted money back into the business, into marketing, which could drive additional throughput. See, personal finances is one of those things that oftentimes we forsake. The Exit Planning Institute made a statement one time in one of their studies done called the State of the Markets, which showed that 75% of business owners do not have a written financial plan, just the basic financial plan. 75% of business owners don't even have the personal side done. So how in the world, if we're not even willing to take the easiest task of doing the personal finances, are we going to succeed at the complex task of our business finances? Let's deal with tax and investment. Do you currently have an investment portfolio? Now, that may seem like a simple question, and perhaps you do, and I'm glad you do. But so many business owners do not have money outside of the business. And I hear things like, well, it's too risky. I chuckle because the equity markets are far less risky statistically than private business. But we can see and we can touch our private businesses and we think we're in control. And if we go through a down market, we can control it because we're going to spend more time and energy to make sure we offset the downward motion of the market in our businesses. But this world of investing, friends, there's going to come a point in our lives where we're going to have to diversify away from our businesses. And an investment portfolio is something that's not complicated, but it is highly emotional. In fact, just remind you, I don't manage my own money. That's right. Yours truly. I don't manage my own money. You say, well, Justin, you have the credentials. Look, I've been doing it 20 years. I don't trust myself because it's my money. It's emotional to me. It represents hard work. It represents blood, sweat, and tears. Yeah. And I realize as I walk and talk this life with business owners that we're a sharp lot. We're very smart. We are well versed. Someone tells us we can't do something, we know how to figure it out. The world of investing is backwards. In fact, if we think we should, more than likely we shouldn't. That's the way the game plays. So I ask the question, do you currently have an investment or wealth portfolio? If you don't, start. Go ahead and start learning this, because the last thing you want to do is have the largest transaction of your life move from an illiquid position to a liquid position, only then to try to learn investments and then make the dumbest mistakes that most new investors do when it comes to the market with your fortune. You don't want to do that at the time of your exit. You want to do it years before. So that way when you go to exit your business, you're already well grounded on what it takes to yield the results you need for your personal life. And you can only do that through experience. Do you know, if you have a portfolio, what your long-term expected rate of return is? Do you know what your rate of return that you expect from your portfolio over the long term is? I hear so many people come in, they say, I'm going to make 11% return because so-and-so says that in the marketplace. Man, it's awful aggressive. I have this personal belief that we should plan for the worst and hope for the best. I think that whenever we make contingency plans as a planner, go figure, but whenever we make plans, if we can try to anticipate the worst case scenario, then anything above the worst case helps us to achieve our long-term goals. So in my own world, I don't plan on 11, 12% return. I had used a much more conservative number. Now, is it possible? Well, yeah, anything's possible. Is it probable? Unknown. Unknown. I wish I could predict the future. I can't. Maybe you can. So if you have a portfolio and you know your expected returns, are you confident that your investment returns are meeting the needs of your immediate and long-term financial plan? There's one statement that I often say, and that is past performance is not indicative of future results. And any assertion to the contrary is a federal offense. That's the statement that the regulators want us to say. The reason before it is because if it's meeting our returns, if our returns are good today, they may not be tomorrow. That's why I want to look at long-term plans. Do you currently have a well-rounded personal tax plan that's able to absorb in a business transaction? Now, I'm not talking about just putting money into an IRA. I'm talking about a plan that's going to strategize how are you going to reduce the taxes of a potential business transition. You see, there are things in the code that unless you're out in front of it for as long as 60 months ahead of time, it can have adverse tax effects to us. So this idea that we're going to run our business all the way up to the stopping point, and then all of a sudden we're going to do all of our planning right before we go to sell, which happens consistently for people. It happens consistently. I have people that call me and they say, hey, Justin, I just received an LOI. I got to do some tax planning. Friends, that's not how we are to run our lives personally. We need a tax plan in place that's accounting for the possibility of a business transition. Do you have that? When's the last time you met with your tax preparer? When's the last time you met with your tax preparer, your tax advisor, before the end of the year? Candidly, we should have been meeting together in the last 90 days, assessing how the first 6 months of the year is shaping up and where does it project us out before the end of the year. Let's talk about the opposite side of the balance sheet. The opposite. Most of us talk about our assets. We want to see how much our business is worth. We want to see how much our real estate's worth, our portfolios are worth. How much debt do you have? Are you comfortable with the present level of debt? Are you going to do a transition and wipe out all the debt? Does that make sense? How is debt going to play into your tax plan? Is debt going to accelerate your possible transition or decelerate or slow down your possible transition in the future? When's the last time you looked at interest rates? I got a client right now that I haven't worked with a personal planning client in a while. This planning client is a family friend, and so I said, sure, I'll jump in and help with this particular case. And they have about $800,000 of debt. Not a lot of debt for the business size that they have. And it's positioned like in 17 different loans. And as I was looking at this debt, I'm looking at the interest, and I'm calculating just simple math that they have basically an effective interest rate of around about 7%. So I was talking through the strategy. I said, one of the things we can do is we can consolidate this debt. It looks like it's going to take us around 6 years to pay it off at the current rates, but I believe through consolidation that we're going to be able to pay this off in sooner than 60 months. I think we're going to break it out in the 4 to 5 year range. And the individual could not grasp that restructuring debt was a way to build assets, but that paying off the debt in this particular case because of the tax plan was going to be adverse in terms of building wealth. We didn't want to pay the debt off, which sounds kind of crazy. We didn't want to pay the debt off because we were using the dollars to pay the debt off for other places, which would save us considerable taxes. But restructuring the debt, when's the last time you looked at your debt as a possibility of refinancing, restructuring? Do you even have control of your debt, or is it just something that you've taken and now you just pay it off out of habit? See, debt's one of those things we have to deal with when we start thinking about transition. Then we get into insurances. Most commonly, we deal with life and disability insurance. More than likely, you have some sort of life insurance in place for you right now. Do you have the right amount? Do you have the right type? What about your disability insurance? Is it portable if you retire before your Social Security age? Can you keep it if you sell your business? What about health insurance? That's a bugaboo, friends. That's a tough one. That's a tough one because I've seen so many clients. In fact, we have, I would say dozens. I don't have the exact number in my head. We have dozens, I can say, I think safely, of clients who are only working for health insurance reasons. Now they're making some money, but they don't have to work. They want something to do. But the biggest issue that's unknown to them is health care concerns. So long before we ever enter into this area of trying to transition our business, we have to take a step back and look at insurances. We have to make sure, okay, we have the right amount of coverage in place for us currently. We have the right amount of coverage and the right types of coverages in place where after the business is done that we can protect our family. So insurance has come into play. And then we deal with estate planning. Whoa, man. Currently, as it stands right now, I was reading an article this morning in the Wall Street Journal about the proposed estate changes. Now, I'm recording this in, mid-August or so. This may air sometime in September. And I'm reading these proposed estate changes saying, holy cow, if these happen, the sheer number of estate plans that have to be adjusted are enormous. So do you currently have an estate plan in place? Have you met with an attorney recently? Does the attorney know about your pending transaction, how much you're truly worth? Is there going to be an inheritance that you're going to receive or leave? Do you have all of your legal documents in place in terms of last will and testament, power of attorneys, any types of trust that you may need? Is it tax sensitive? Let me say it again. Is it tax sensitive? Is it asset protected? Is it a true strategy that's protecting the assets? You see, you sell the business, you go through a liquidity event, you move it away from the structure and the safety of that LLC, S Corp, C Corp, whatever it is, general partnership, and now you have this cash, or now you have this income stream. Is it creditor protected? Just think about it. All of a sudden it gets the news in your town because people talk that you sold your business for some dollars. It's eventually going to get out. And now you're a target, perhaps, of some sort of a scam to set you up, to take you down. See, friends, financial readiness is not all about having just enough dollars in the bank. Some of this needs to be done far in advance of you ever even considering walking through the transition process. As we go into your financial planning advisor, do you truly have a comprehensive planner? There's one thing I've learned in this world that I operate in. The CPA, Certified Public Accountant, is often the most trusted math person or the most trusted tax person in the world of finance. Most everybody has a CPA. But a true planner, somebody who's going to walk alongside you, that's going to shine a flashlight in front of you, that's going to sit in that chair before the transition, during the transition, and after the transition of your life. That person, whenever you're like a client did today, when you're in Italy and you need something done, that you can call that person, they have the resources to help you resolve whatever the issue is. Do you have a planner? Let me take it a step further. Is the planner facing the exact same thing that you're facing? Are they considering an exit? Are they considering a transition? I was reading a statistic not too long ago that blew my mind that said just north of 85% of advisors. Now, that term was not defined. I don't know if they're talking about insurance, banking, finance, investment managers. I don't know where that advisor term is coming from, but it said just north of 85% of advisors will be nearing retirement in the next 5 to 10 years. Holy cow. So here you are, you're about to go into your last act, that last chapter of your book. You built your business, you built it to where now your business is attractive and is ready to exit. You got all your finances in order, only to find out that person who's supposed to walk with you through the remaining chapter of your life is doing their own final act. They're in a position that they're walking away from. I got to tell you, friends, as somebody who's been in this financial world for 20 years, almost 20 years now. Man, that's hard to believe me saying that. Almost 20 years now I've been walking through this journey. I'm 40. I'm 42. Oh, man. I'm young. I'm young in this world of finance. And that's sad. It's sad. So who do you trust? Who is the financial planner that's providing you the advice? Do they have the seasoned experience? Are they a novice? I'm in a group with about 15 other financial advisors. I'm the longest tenured advisor. I'm also the youngest. It's pretty amazing to me at this point in my career. There's individuals in there who are in the mid 50s who have less than 2 years experience. They're novice. They haven't lived through the storms. They don't know what 07, 08, 09 did, what 2012 did, what 18 did. They don't know these things. They have the book knowledge, but yet they haven't been proven through the storm yet. They're not battlefield tested. Are you confident the advisor you have right now is battlefield tested and can walk with you through this last act? Friends, this world of finance, personal financial readiness, is one that we should not take lightly. In fact, this is why we recommend that you always start off with the personal side and you start that relationship with that advisor early on. And then we know what our wealth gap is, as we showed a few episodes back. Then we know what our value gap is. Then we know what our profitability gap is. Then we bring in the business advisory team, and they help us build the value of our company. They walk through assessments like we just journeyed through, and they can break it down to say, if we make these tactical actions, these are going to give us the best return on our investment for the dollars we're going to spend and the time we're going to commit. So let me ask you, let's wrap it all up. Are you personally ready to transition? Is your financial affairs in order? Could you emotionally walk away today? Don't be hasty in that answer. And then let me ask you this. Is your business prepared to bring you top dollar, best in class? Is your business prepared for your potential exit? Candidly, chances are the answer to that is no. Whenever I heard this for the first time is about 6 years ago, and I was listening to an educator talk at a high level. Now, keep in mind, I'd already sold 3 businesses for a profit before I ever heard some of this language. And I can remember the emotions, and I can remember the business itself. And I can remember sitting there listening to this individual saying, where in the world was this training? I would have paid tens of thousands of dollars per year to have somebody teach me how to build my business into best in class so I could have accelerated my net worth over a very short period of time. This is value maximization planning. This is what a good value growth team can do. Friends, I hope these last 5, 6, 7 episodes have helped you. I hope it's driven you to a point to where you're thinking about your business from a holistic standpoint, from a standpoint that it is the horse, so to speak, that you can ride to retirement. It is the solution to your problems, but it will not reach your destination without intense and vigilant effort. I say it every week, life is hard, but life is good. Life is good. We're so blessed.